Hey everybody, welcome to TCP-Talks with Jonathan Baker and Justin Broadley from the Cloud Pod. In this series, we're bringing you interviews with the best and brightest leaders and heroes from the tech and cloud industry. Hey everybody. In this episode of TCP Talks, we chat with Amiram Shachar, founder and CEO of Spot, which aims to help its customers reduce complexity and compute costs by up to 90% in the AWS, GCP and Azure clouds.
Amiram, will you please tell us about yourself?
Yeah, hi. So first of all, thank you for having me. My name is Amiram. I'm the founder and the CEO of Spot. I am based out of San Francisco. Just a little bit about me. I'm originally from Israel, from Tel Aviv, and my background is like every Israeli dude. I've been to the military, and I served for the unit that's responsible for the cloud infrastructure of the military. So I've done that role for about 7 years. I was an officer there, then started my journey at Spot. So now, great to be here.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming on the show. We'd love to have you here. It's been a big week for you guys, though. We saw the acquisition from NetApp. So congratulations on that. I'm sure that's exciting and something new that your company's about to go through this major transformation as you join the NetApp family. What's really driving, you think, your decision to get bought by NetApp? You know, what do you see your synergies being?
Obviously, acquisition doesn't happen overnight. So it's a process. And earlier this year, we were very on, almost about to close our Series C of funding from some really respected VCs. And then we got this phone call from NetApp, hey guys, what do you think about going on better together? And the truth is, we came to know NetApp about a year ago when we first met them in their headquarters in Sunnyvale. And we really liked their story. We thought it out of all the vendors in the cloud infrastructure space, they really have the most compelling story because they add a lot of value and it's a no-brainer to use their technology in the public cloud. Unlike of other big ISVs that are still have not figured out their steps in the cloud. So we felt that there could be an amazing synergy. So then the junction was will we go and raise more money, do it ourselves, or will we just stay and build whatever we want to build because we're loving the vision, and we can build it under the NetApp umbrella, and that's what really led us to actually go on that route.
Yeah, I read your blog post you wrote about being introduced to Anthony Lai, who I've met as well several times and had some really great conversations with. I tend to agree with you. I think NetApp, of all of the hardware vendors who are making the transition to the cloud, has really got a robust strategy that makes sense. And, they're not trying to continue to maintain their physical on-prem hardware. They understand that people take the right advantage of the right technology at the right time. And I really do appreciate their vision and that they're trying to be more than just a storage vendor that people have known them for a long time. So, let's take a little bit step back. What was the issue that you were trying to solve when you founded Spotinst with your co-founder? What were you seeing as a DevOps practitioner, as a cloud practitioner, that you were I want to fix this problem?
Yeah, so I'm gonna say some very controversial things right now, but that's the truth. It's all started because I was working for a company who needed to save money on cloud, and we didn't have the privilege of buy reserved capacity and prepay for compute and then get discount. So I had to find better ways to reduce the cloud bill. And the alternative was we'll just shut down the resources. We couldn't pay for this as a company. We're a small company for the company I was working for. And then I got introduced to Spot instances. I tried to play with them. I tried to use them. I've experienced a lot of issues, and I said I need to fix that. I was a student in parallel for computer science, and I said why I just do a research about that as part of my academic research and just solve that problem that I have at work. And that was the initial idea. The controversial thing I'm saying here is, when we realized that there is a big problem here in the market and people would want to use it, so we tried to go raise money. And then we, it was at the very early beginning, cloud was not cool at that time, at 2015. It was still at the beginning of the inflection point. And VCs like did not understand what we're doing, and like everybody said like, no, it sounds like why would somebody run their production applications on server that are going to be disappear? And there were like moments in time that like I looked at my co-founder and like he looked at me and like, and we said maybe they're right, like maybe there isn't, like maybe it's not a good idea. Maybe we should halt what we do. But the responses from customers, and this is what built the DNA of the company, which is like solely based on like customers' feedback and response, was like, yeah, we want to use it. Like, if you guys are going to make it work for us, we're going to use it. And that was the problem we solved. And that's like why we kept building.
Completely understand why the more traditional VCs wouldn't understand, because they probably dealt with IT industries going back 20 or 30 years who have no idea of the concept of ephemeral technology. Those things have been running in their data centers for years. So what's with the rebranding from Spotinst to Spot? Was that before or after the kind of the decision to be acquired by NetApp?
So that was way before, like the decision of getting acquired. It was something, it was like hanging out there in the air, like since the very early beginning. Because like, there is one simple reason that we did it and one like more deep reason of why we did it. Like the simple reason is because Spotinst is sometimes in some cultures, and it's a hard to pronounce name, which is just as simple as this. We saw people just pronouncing our name, Spotinst, Spotinest. So that was like a main reason, simple reason. And then the second reason was we're growing as a company. We have a growing portfolio of products. We are delivering way more value than just using Spot instances. But obviously that's still the core of the company. So we wanted to grow beyond Spotinst, which always refers to Spot instances. And we said, we want to keep our core, but we still want to grow beyond. So Spot was a great, next permutation of the name Spotinst, and we're happy that we've chose that path.
Over the years, the Spot market has changed from being quite volatile to being more stable now. I guess as more people adopt Spot as a first strategy for deploying workloads, it sort of levels out the pricing. It brings the price up closer towards the on-demand cost, at least. Do you think that change in the market is something that Spot has helped drive?
So I don't want to take credit alone, but like I think like also AWS has done a phenomenal job of like making Spot more easy to consume and easy to like for people to use. And I think like we have a big part of like making Spot popular and making people believe that they can use Spot as their first choice for stateless microservices, things that you can run Spot for. And provide the automation to make it happen. I wouldn't say that like Spot is less volatile. I would say that Amazon did a great job making it more simple to use. But I would say that like just because more people using Spot, it just creates more demand. So, it just means that there is more volatility. But the good news is that Amazon is growing so fast and adding so much capacity every day. So there will always be more capacity available to Spot customers.
Google took a different approach with their Spot market, and they price their preemptible instances at a flat rate. Do you prefer that model over the Amazon model, or do you have an opinion on that?
I think that the Google model is very limited, I would say. I think the Amazon approach, that's the right approach. Not because of like the price differentiation. I think like Amazon also like giving you some like peace of mind on price. The price isn't changing like every second, it's changing every like few hours maybe. On Google, they terminate their server every 24 hours, which makes it to really ephemeral, as opposed to Amazon that like you can live on a server for like maybe, more than a few days even sometimes. And you can see that Microsoft is adopting like the Amazon way, which is essentially embracing what customers need.
So when you think about, multi-cloud in this context here, how do you see multi-cloud from your vision? What's the right way to do multi-cloud versus the wrong way from your perspective?
So I think you guys probably see it. Like multi-cloud doesn't mean like I run an application on two different cloud providers at the same time, because it just doesn't work. You can't really have an application and like have a database in one place and a front end in a different place, and they'll talk to each other because of like data gravity and security and performance and all of that. So it just doesn't work. To me, multi-cloud, I actually like to call it multiple clouds, because you have multiple clouds and you can use different clouds for different use cases. But at the end of the day, you need to have like services, like probably a complete microservice running in a specific cloud. And perhaps you will have like a different microservice, a different API that does something else on a different cloud, and then they'll just talk in APIs. But a single application would most likely have to run on a single cloud, in my opinion.
We share a very similar opinion: right problem, right solution, versus lowest common denominator cloud.
Absolutely.
But we see the marketing people and other companies arguing for this other vision, which is that lowest common denominator, and they're typically using Kubernetes as their way to get there. And then you see things like GKE come out that are multi-cloud enabled, and they're like one common control plane. It does seem that we're in this weird place where everyone who really understands the cloud is like, yeah, don't do that. Yet everyone is trying to sell a solution in that space that does exactly what everyone says not to do.
I couldn't agree more. You phrased it like very, very good. I would just add on the Kubernetes stuff. Like if you see like the trend of Kubernetes and what cloud providers does with Kubernetes, they're actually making very proprietary. So like if you look at EKS, it becomes like an Amazon service. It's connected with VPC and it's connected with IAM and it's connected with like a lot of like different services. So then Kubernetes, like other than just like abstracting infrastructure and running containers, like it's not providing right now the the vision of like running everywhere and like moving containers from cloud to cloud, because EKS became like very proprietary to AWS, and Azure does the same for AKS, and Google does the same for GKE. Each one of the providers, they want to keep the customer on their hardware, so they give a lot of software that you just don't go out.
Is that something you're going to solve for us? Can you level the playing field and let us run container or compute workloads across clouds?
So that's not a problem we're solving now, because we don't see customers saying that this is their problem. We like solve like big problems that customers have, and I don't think that like solving like getting a container from Amazon to Google, that's like what customers need right now. Maybe in the future, I don't know. Maybe like when you see like more edge compute, and customers would want to see their application running from the edge to the core very quickly. So like, vendors will have to accelerate solutions around that. But so far, like we don't like solving problems that do not exist.
So what do you say to people who are worried about vendor lock-in then?
The way to manage vendor lock-in is to make sure you have the right tools in place to always be able to make a migration from one cloud to another, like within reasonable time. So if you deploy, like if you choose Amazon and Google and Azure, and you deploy like certain applications of Amazon, like or maybe 80% of your application on Amazon, and you have 20% of your application on Azure and GCP, but you're using the same set of tools. You're using the same tool, like set of like automation processes and CI/CD. So then when you really want to do like a cut off from like one cloud to another, it's just a very technical, mechanical process that the company can do. And then they can just negotiate with a specific cloud provider and tell them like, hey, if we don't get this term, or like if we don't get this resolved, we have options. And I think that's like how companies should look about that.
You're actually very aligned with many of the things that I tell people all the time in the space around multi-cloud, vendor lock-in, how to think about this stuff differently. Do you think that it comes from more of a DevOps background, or do you feel like that's more of an engineering background that kind of brings that perspective? Because it's interesting when you talk to engineers and DevOps people and cloud practitioners, et cetera, they all have different flavors of that view on the world.
Yeah, so I'm a software engineer, like by training. What I was doing in the military, I was like using my software engineering like skills to manage data centers. So how we were like operating data centers and writing like software to operate data centers. So it's kind of like, a combination of like a software developer and DevOps, but I would define myself more of like as a DevOps guy.
So you mentioned branching out into other products. Can you talk about some of the other cost optimization and Ocean, perhaps?
What we really like about our portfolio of products that, it just, we kept growing with the customers over time. We listened to them. We solved like one problem at a time with huge focus on their feedback. And we got to like a place where we are today, which we call it from visibility to actionability. And I will explain. If you look about a lot of like vendors today in the cloud ecosystem, you either see like people who give you visibility or people who give you like automation and actions. I would say like look at like companies like Cloud Health or Cloud Checker will give you like reporting, visualization, financial tools to manage cloud. They don't do automation. They don't like manage infrastructure. They just provide you the financial management. On the other side, you will see companies like HashiCorp and Jenkins and these guys who provide infrastructure automation. They don't do reporting. They don't do that. So we were able to like build a set of product portfolio that gives like the full range from visibility to actionability. And the way we grew into that was, one product at a time. First product was automation. Second product was automation of containers, Ocean, which I'm happy to expand more about that. And then the third product was, hey guys, you guys are doing all this automation for us. Can you give us visibility product? And then we added a visibility product.
Can you tell us a little bit more about Ocean and what you're trying to solve with Ocean at Spot?
So Ocean is a product that I'm very, very excited about. It's so simple, yet the underlying technology is like super complex and like solving a really big problem. It's so simple in a way that like the promise to customers is like, hey, Ocean is a data plane management. And for a second, before I talk about Ocean, let's talk about a data plane for Kubernetes. So Kubernetes usually compose out of two components. One component that's called the control plane, and the second component is the data plane. So the control plane, that's like where the master lives. Like usually it's being managed by a managed provider, like a managed solution, like EKS, GKE, where the Kubernetes like brain and master nodes where they sit. That's the control plane. The second part is the data plane. The data plane, this is where all the worker nodes live, where all the server, all the compute, storage, networking of like where the actual container is running. So for example, like so Ocean is taking care of like this like control plane area of Kubernetes, and it can connect with for the data plane, and it can connect with every control plane of your choice. Like you can use OpenShift as a control plane, you can use GKE, EKS. Like for example, an alternative to Ocean, can be like Azure container instances, which is also aimed to solve containers, the data plane, or Fargate on Amazon. So Ocean is basically aimed to provide that data plane, so customers can just deploy containers. And if you saw from the acquisition announcement, so we actually announced our vision with NetApp to deliver ADI, which is application-driven infrastructure. Because in most cases, you would deploy compute, and then you would deploy your containers on top of this compute. And our approach with Ocean is like, no, just deploy your app first. And according to the app specification at provisioning time, and then at runtime, we will match the infrastructure. Like we'll see what the application needs, and then we'll match the infrastructure.
It's a little bit similar to like Knative, maybe in some ways. Is that a correct understanding of it, or am I missing the mark?
So I think you're in the right direction, because Knative, I would say that Knative is even like it's a higher abstraction on top of Ocean. So Ocean is like one layer down. Is like the layer that like you would as a software developer or a DevOps, you would like define your containers in kubectl, like with kubectl with YAML files. And then like you just say like kubectl apply, and then Ocean reads like all of like the configuration of your application, and then it auto scale, provision, manage the underlying infrastructure. So on the same time, like you can do like Knative, and then you can just deploy with Knative. And then Ocean listens to what Knative needs from the infrastructure and meets that demand.
So how does this compare with something like Fargate and AWS?
So I would say they're like two competing products.
Okay.
Should I think of it more of like a pass layer, sort of to like OpenShift, or is that an even different level of abstraction than what you're thinking of here?
So no, it's not competing with OpenShift. It's more competing like with Fargate, because OpenShift at the end of the day, if you try to visualize in your head like this, like three layers, like there is one layer of the EC2 instances, and there is another layer of like the containers, and there is another layer of like how to manage Kubernetes and permissions and deployment and everything. So OpenShift sits on the higher level of how to manage Kubernetes, how to manage permissions, how to deploy stuff. Just this is where they sit. Then like where we sit is like between the infrastructure layer and the containers layer, because we just listen to all the layers above us. We see like what OpenShift wants, how they want to deploy that, what containers needs to be scheduled, what resources do they need. And then we are talking to the lower level, infrastructure layer, and just getting the right resources for those requests and ever-changing, demands in applications.
Got it. I think I understand it now pretty well. Maybe you could walk us through one of those use cases you mentioned.
Let's take like a customer example. So it's a public case study. We're working with Ticketmaster on their Kubernetes environments. And in Ticketmaster, they want to move fast. They have more than you can count developers and more than you can count people who needs to be responsible on infrastructure. And they build a lot of microservices and they deploy a lot of microservices every day. And they had like an endless Tetris game with I need to build a container, then I need to make sure I provision the right EC2 size, the right EC2 type, the right EC2 server, family type, and all of that to meet my application demand. Then the developer, other than writing code, he had to think should he run on M5 server? Or should it run on Intel CPU from that type or a different type? How much memory that service needs? Or is it just needs to get AMD's CPU or Intel one or GPU maybe? So with Ocean, what they do, they just don't think about that. They just write their YAML files. They describe their containers. They say what they think they need. And then what Ocean does, it reads that and it provisions the infrastructure to meet the application needs that they developed. And then the nicest thing about it that over time, let's say you're a developer and you say hey, this is my container app A, and I think it needs 5 gig of RAM. So then you provision it in your YAML file and you say 5 gig of RAM, and then Ocean gives you 5 gig of RAM, an EC2 instance that fits with 5 gig of RAM. But then over time, the nicest thing about it is that it sees the utilization of the server. And then if the utilization is 3 gig of RAM, that you don't use everything, so over time, it will just downsize the container and will put it on a different machine. So you can continue to build, you can continue to have different requirements and demand in applications, and just the infrastructure will fit itself.
So from the software engineering side of things, what do developers need to do in order to sort of make the best use of Ocean?
That's a great question. So what they need to think about is is it stateful or stateless? Do I need to have my data close to me or not? So that's one thing they need to think about, and they just give a parameter for Ocean. And then the second thing is do you guys want to be opinionated about your compute or not? For example, they can tell us we want this machine on this type of server because we know. So they just give us a hint, and then we'll Ocean match it with whatever they need. But other than the distinction between stateless and stateful, they don't need to think about anything.
So as we look kind of ahead, I know things might change as the acquisition completes. What other things beyond Ocean are you guys doing at Spot that you're excited about that we should be looking forward to in the next few months?
So first of all, I think I am very excited to work on an integration between Ocean and Project Astra of NetApp, which is a storage management for Kubernetes. So providing these two projects together, a data plane management with a storage world-class storage management of Astra, that's going to be something that I'm going to be really looking forward to see. And the second thing that I'm very excited about is the visibility part of what we're building. So we're going to work really hard in the next few months of releasing more versions to our cloud visibility product called Cloud Analyzer. We're going to add very deep support for cost management and capacity planning, and basically really help organizations to map their cloud account, understand where they need to think about reserved capacity with savings plans and reserved instances, or the different permutations on different clouds, and where they need to think about spot instances to really map all the landscape of infrastructure that an organization has, and giving them the full picture of to think about where to go with reserve capacity and where to go with spot capacity, because ultimately I think that's what organizations need to understand that balance, which workload and where they can live.
I completely agree. It's difficult to sort of rationalize some of the things we tell engineering sometimes, because on one hand we tell them auto-scaling, scale up and down as needed. On the other hand, we tell them reserved instances because we get a better deal that way, but then there's no point turning those things off or auto-scaling at that point. So having a tool to help us find the right balance, to optimize the cost between the things that we need all the time and the things that we don't is going to be great. So other than compute costs, are you looking at the visibility in sort of other costs of the cloud?
Correct. So with the NetApp partnership right now, we are going to look for storage, obviously, and be very provide a world-class solution for not only compute but also for storage, and then obviously all the rest networking and PaaS services that you use in the cloud. Out of the higher level thinking that just help you to map whatever you have, and then create a journey for you that every product that we have becomes an insertion point in your journey to achieve the nirvana of automated, optimized, easy to use, simple cloud infrastructure.
Is there anything we haven't talked about that you want to mention?
We still need to close the acquisition, so it hasn't been completed. Just to thank to the amazing employees at Spot that are working tirelessly on building great technology, very customer obsessed, been working on this journey for 5 years now. We've made amazing things. Just want to thank everybody, and obviously thank our customers and partners, and thank you guys for having me today. It was a big pleasure, and always great to talk to people who are very opinionated about cloud, and happy to see that most of the things we discussed was a very big consensus about.
Yeah, it was great to have you on. I really appreciate it. And, I've always been really impressed by Spot and what you guys have been doing over the last few years. We really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing. And I know it's an exciting time with the NetApp acquisition and your employees, and on top of a very interesting world time with COVID and some of the other social unrest that's going on. So we do appreciate you taking the time and coming and joining us and walking us through kind of the future and what you're seeing in the world. So we appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Jonathan and Justin. I look forward to speaking again soon and continue to produce amazing content. It's great to follow you guys.
Thanks.
Thank you. Visit thecloudpod.net to subscribe to the show, join our Slack channel, or sign up for our weekly newsletter. You can also find information on reaching our audience through a CloudPod sponsorship opportunity. A big thank you to today's guest, and thank you for listening.